Yo, it's your boy Logos, and today I want to react to MoistCr1tikal in this video talking about his conversation with Sneako. I saw this trending a few days ago when it first dropped, but honestly, I didn't feel like forcing a reaction or content just because I see something trending and I think it's going to give me more views. If the reaction isn't authentic and I don't feel like reacting to it, I'm not going to laugh or give commentary like I usually would. And I'd rather prioritize good content and genuine reactions or commentary over just doing it for views or growth. So let's get into it.
I know it's April 1st, but I'm not fooling. The title is not a joke. I talked to Sneako, and I gotta be honest, I had butterflies in my tummy. I was more excited to talk to him than I would be to talk to Santa Claus. Now, I know this will be coming as a shock to a lot of you, a bit of a jump scare, so I hope you're sitting down so it doesn't knock you off your feet. Sneako and I have not been on the best of terms recently.
I'm
We've tried our
surprised.
best to keep it a secret and handle it behind closed doors, but unfortunately, it's bled into the public eye, and you know what? By golly, I'll say it with my whole chest for all to hear. We just haven't liked each other. We haven't seen eye to eye on many things, so our internet beef has become this fine Wagyu steak. It's been this very tasty, juicy bit of drama between the two of us, and today it finally boiled over and we had a conversation. And I want to show you some clips from it. He actually asked me to record, so don't think that this was some kind of one-party consent thing where I pulled the wool over his eyes and pulled his fucking pants down to surprise him with a recording. He had actually asked me to. And I want to show you how this went, because it was actually a very interesting conversation we had. I want to tell you how we got there. It's because last night I noticed Sneako was raving about cuties on Twitter yet again, talking about how much he loves it and how he'll always defend it.
Cuties is really about how important Islamic values are in the face of satanic wokeness. I love cuties. Huh? I don't get it. I really don't get it. He would never debate me, however, your favorite YouTubers sit in their rooms and feed lies to you. I hope you ain't talking about cuties. That's insane. I don't understand why you defend this movie. It's just weird. It's pretty sick if you ask me.
But then said that I wouldn't debate him on it. And this little nugget of cringe had me scratching the hair on my chin, confused. I wouldn't debate you on it. I would actually love to hear your side of things on how you could possibly excuse the blatant sexualization of the child actresses in the film.
For
Now,
real.
I'm not a debater. I actually am not a fan of debates in general. I prefer
I
just
love them.
general.
I love debates. Even I remember high school, I was watching like debates. I can't remember the channel, maybe the Great Debates, where it was like a British debate show where they would have like nowadays controversial topics like religion and economics and slavery and all types of controversial stuff. And it was just debated back and forth between professors, intellectuals, but also just average everyday people in the audience who would give their perspective. And sometimes it will be believers in the religion or non-believers going back and forth. And I just love and appreciate that open discourse and forum to have serious conversations about things we usually don't talk about nowadays. Especially, at important places where people come together, like, holidays and stuff like that. That's really the only time you're comfortable to have that conversation because those people that you know. But at the same time, those people don't want to have those type of conversations with you because it's so controversial. But I love that show. I love for any type of debate show because it's not personal. You just battling ideas, and that's what it should be about.
General conversations as opposed to these like gotcha and leading questions and traps and shit. I think that's not very conducive to actual understanding of different sides of arguments. So
Mm.
I don't debate.
Sound like you describing CNN, Fox News, and most major cable news channels nowadays. They don't report the news; they give their opinions. And if they have people on, it's little sound bites. So you can't even have deep conversations no more about complex topics that you definitely need to have because these complex topics influence people's lives, especially when you're talking about science, medicine, and politics. That's why stuff like Joe Rogan and other podcasts has blown up because they have hours and hours of time to dive deep into these deep conversations without having to worry about trying to fit in a soundbite and you can't even fully understand what they're saying. They can go deep into it and that's why people love it.
But I was very willing to have this conversation with Sneako, and I reached out to talk to him, and he was more than willing to talk about it. So we did. We talked about cuties and even talked about all of our general grievances with each other. And this was a very different side of Sneako. I went into this expecting him to be his standard, unhinged, like very animated, cartoonish self that I see in all of his content on Twitter and Rumble, where he's doing these like temper tantrums and like throwing his ass in a circle and going wild, hog wild.
Why?
But here, this was a very laid back, very calm and collected Sneako who was actually more than willing to concede on some of his points as well as see different sides of situations. And I didn't expect that. And I'm very appreciative of that pleasant surprise as well, because I went into this with pretty low expectations, but after finishing our talk, I'm actually pretty curious to see where Sneako goes next, because like I mentioned, there are some things that he just fully admitted, like maybe he was guilty of doing similar things that he criticized others for, and that he was going to be repurposing his message and changing things around to make it more conducive to positivity. So overall, the whole conversation went in a totally different direction than I expected. Of course, he's still very passionate about some things, and we still fought on quite a few things, and the reality is there's just a lot of things that I don't see eye to eye to him on with some of the things he talks about. But overall, I really walked away with a very different impression of Sneako from this. Now, I know I'm blue-balling you here, but one more thing that I think is important to mention, he has said that he's wanted to debate me over the last 2 weeks here. He even made this big hullabaloo on Twitter about how I ducked a debate with him on Aiden Ross' stream. Even though he had not replied to any of my DMs at that point, there was no debate scheduled between him and I. So that was just a blatant lie. I think he was just joking around about it and it missed the mark because people actually thought that I was avoiding him. But he's not wrong in the fact that I really didn't want to have a conversation with him over the last 2 weeks because all of it was extremely geared towards hurt feelings. At least that's how I interpreted a lot of his statements. It seemed to focus more on me saying, "P.U., you stink," and him taking it as, he's canceling me. There's not a whole lot of productive conversation that can come from that with me just explaining over and over again that I'm just insulting you, and that's the simple brass tacks of it. But over the last 48 hours, it really does feel like he's had this come to Jesus moment where he's recognized that I was never canceling him. I was making fun of him. He even issued an apology about bringing up my girlfriend and stuff like that, and has recognized that he has been off the mark on a lot of things recently as well. He also, apologized for being a cuck, which was a wild thing. He talked about how cuckoldry was a mistake. So it looks like he was never okay with it, even though for a time he did say everyone should try it. It looks like he's changed his perspective on that and now looks back on it with a...
Him saying everyone should try cuckery is like a crackhead saying everybody should try crack. Like, no, you don't even like it yourself. You just somehow fake it or you get that little bit of buzz off of it, but most of the time you're regretting it. I'm not gonna listen to a crackhead and that tells me to try crack. I'm not gonna listen to a cuck that tells me to try cuckolding or cuckery or whatever the fuck you call it. I don't know how you say that shit. Like, seriously, this is ridiculous. You telling people to try cuckery, but you yourself, you can't even live with the inner demons or watch your girl get bent over backwards. I'm glad he changed on that. I don't know why you apologizing to Charlie. Apologize to yourself for putting yourself through that. That was nothing but yourself allowing that to happen. Don't be mad at the girl. You did it to yourself.
A lot of regret, which isn't surprising since those insults were not some of his favorite to keep hearing. So that's not really a discussion we had. I think and have always said, whatever happens between consenting adults in the bedroom is fine. As long as no one's getting fucking hurt, there's no, victims, it's consenting adults, you're good to do whatever makes you happiest. The reason I always talked about the cuckoldry is, one, because fucking hilarious that a lot of his beliefs now go very much against his past of being open to watching his girl get fucked in front of him by multiple men on a couple occasions. And two, it was illustrating a bit of ridiculousness with him being the moral authority on healthy relationships when he himself was in a very confusing one that he wasn't proud of, yet still preaching that people should do it anyway. That was the whole point behind it. I wasn't trying to kink shame like a lot of people started accusing me of. If you want to be a cuckold, then be a proud one.
I swear I hate these people. They know everything attached to the word shame to make consequences or standards a bad thing, but they don't know how to feel shame at all. They know how to use the word shame for their own needs and purposes, but when it comes to like feeling shame, it's like accountability is kryptonite from Kevin Samuels, and it is it is insane. Whenever somebody says something, or you always gotta be shaming somebody, saying that you're obese and that you're unhealthy is not fat shaming. It's the truth. The BMI isn't a made up thing to make you feel bad because you're insecure and you have a fragile ego. The BMI is a universal thing. It is not something made by white people. It is not something to antagonize obese people or obese women. It is none of that nonsense. It is what it is, except that you don't want to do shit and live with the consequences.
And be okay with it and comfortable in your own skin about it. So, it has seemed like he's been more receptive to real talk, and that's what we had. So let me go ahead and show you now. The first thing we talked about was cuties.
This discussion with you about cuties since I dropped that video back in 2020.
How time flies, man. Well, better late than never.
So,
3 years almost.
have you seen the movie?
Yeah, so you mentioned you saw my video, so you know I didn't finish the movie. I physically couldn't. I found it just to be completely repulsive.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't watch the movie. I saw the poster, and that was enough for me. And then I saw all the controversy behind it, and that was enough. I don't need to actually see the girls on screen, but I completely understand Charlie. At least at the start when it first like got released or whenever, wanted to see it and see what the hoopla was about. I just personally didn't want to, and I can also understand why he didn't want to finish it, because if he did want to finish it, it must have been just as bad as I thought it would be, or worse.
Haven't you seen a lot of other movies that have repulsed you before? I watch horror movies. I watch
Come on,
movies that are
bro. Are
provocative
you serious?
quite a bit.
Yeah, but this is something I feel isn't being recognized. There's a difference between being repulsed by fiction, which is like horror movies, that's not real, and
Come
being
on.
repulsed because there's real children doing sexual things. You can't fake that. The actresses were 11 to 13 years old. They were
Jeez,
twerking.
I didn't know that.
There was some
Oh.
very gross scenes in there, and like the cameras would zoom in on their chest and their ass and their crotch. Like
No,
that's
bro.
a very
Nah, bro. How is that not? How they got that movie to be made? They actually use 11 to 13-year-olds. I at least hope they was like at least older, like at least like teenagers. But 11 to 13-year-olds, that's even worse. If you want to make this whole point with cuties or whatever point they try to push out there or whatever nonsense, why not use like actual, 18, 19-year-old girls that look younger and do the whole scenario where high school girls still get picked up and talked to by older men, even though those older men know they're underage and young, and they keep having sex with them knowing that they're underage. That would have been a much more truthful story or a movie, and I don't know about compelling, but at least it wouldn't be as sick, because at least the people who are acting, the girls or the women, they'll be at least 18. They just look younger. It's not going to be directed in such a way to make it look a positive thing. They're going to actually show how the guys know what they're doing, and they're still choosing to have sex with these girls, and they don't care. You're not doing anything what they do in cuties, where you zoom in on the private areas and their underage children. That is ridiculous. If that's what you're doing, I can't believe that you're actually trying to go against pedophilia by making this movie. You're literally giving them freaking content to look at, and it is free and sanctioned. They don't have to risk their freedom or whatever to go and find it. They can just go on freaking whatever Netflix or whatever app or platform made it and find it. They don't have to do no crazy stuff to go and get that type of stuff and risk going to prison as they should be. This is ridiculous. I really don't understand how you could defend this when you break it down even further. As I said previously, you could have did this whole type of scenario in a much more appropriate and much more better receptive way, using actually aged people, using like high school type scenarios, which is actively ongoing throughout the whole world. Like, come on, man, this is ridiculous. Oh man, I'm just go with it. I'm just go.
Different kind of repulsed.
That's what we agree on. I don't agree that those scenes are good. I don't agree with the sexualization of children. I defend the movie because I defend the morality of the movie. And I think that most people that were disgusted have seen those clips or didn't watch the whole movie like you. So that movie was taken out of context quite a bit. People don't really see the moral of the movie, which was defending Islamic values and also pointing out the very real problem that young girls have going on social media and doing these dances. I agree that it's disgusting. I agree that those scenes are repulsive, but I think you could be repulsed by TikTok and pretty much what young girls are doing on social media every single day as well.
That's only if you go and actively seek it out. You don't have to go on TikTok and find young girls, underage girls doing stuff. This is like, I don't get what he's trying to say here. Of course you can find that stuff, maybe, I don't know. But if they are there, I'm pretty sure those platforms are actively trying to take it down. It's not the same. This is a sanctioned made video by a major streaming company from my memory. Because I think Netflix made it, or at least it's on their platform. So I don't understand the correlation you're trying to make.
I think that people outraged at that film should also be outraged at everything that girls are doing now on Instagram, TikTok, and all these apps.
Well, see, but here's the thing. So let's break it down to the very bare essentials. Can children consent?
No.
Can children consent? No, they can't. We agree.
So then why do you think it's excusable to exploit them after having them sign up for this film? If you admit they can't consent, how can they possibly give the okay to be shaking their ass and having a camera all up in their shit while they're doing sexual things like that scene where she takes a picture of her vagina, the scene where they're doing literal, like, toying around with cam sites, like,
what?
That's very different. Like, no one is...
Bro, he talks on social media. That is cam sites. That's a completely different thing. You're her taking pictures. Nah. I don't understand the context. If somebody's seen the movie, explain it to me in the comments below, because I'm not gonna freaking watch it. Because the more details she give, the more I'm not gonna go. No, this is ridiculous. Like I said previously, you could do this in a much better way, and you don't have to even sexualize the freaking actors. In the scenario I propose, you don't even have to sexualize them like that. Just show the conversations. Show the men actually going after them. Show them how. Oh, come on, man. This is ridiculous. We saw EDP. If you want to do something, at least do something more similar to that, where the girl is much, much older. This is sick. And once again, don't use underage actors. Get 19-year-olds. Get 18-year-olds. And then use them in such a way where they're not sexualized, but the men are going after them. You can't defend this, in my opinion.
Is disputing the message, right?
It's a message. I agree with the intention of the movie. I don't think that those scenes are good. That's what we completely agree on. But I think that was an important movie to point out how many people get sucked into this world. I think that was needed. That movie was needed to be made. And I also don't think that movie encouraged pedophiles to go and incite.
What?
Look at these girls. I think that they're more likely to go on TikTok and find girls that they're attracted to. I don't think that this really...
Are you... That's stupid. It just doesn't make any sense. Because like I said previously, this is on Netflix. This is free to watch. They literally... If he's... What Charlie's saying is true about them zooming in on body parts and stuff, he can go there and find that and have to never worry about that getting taken down, at least without a warning or an update first from Netflix. Or something going viral on Twitter or social media. But if he going on TikTok and trying to find underage girls, that stuff gonna get shut down eventually. He doesn't have to worry about that. That's the difference. One is sanctioned, one isn't.
Attracted people to these girls.
Well, it's not like I'm here arguing that this movie created pedophiles, right? But what it did is it delivered a film that they would watch for totally different reasons than the message. Again, the message isn't something that I or pretty much anyone has an issue with. The message is, like you mentioned, the social media poisoning them, making them do the sexual things, which is a problem. But this movie contributes to it since it still used real children to sexualize them to showcase it. That's the issue.
Thank you.
You didn't need it to be children.
I don't think it contributes to it because when you see girls doing this on TikTok, they don't know.
I don't see girls doing it on TikTok.
Thank you. I don't see. I don't see. The only people that would are going to be the pedophiles. They would have to actively search for that. I don't use TikTok outside of for the podcast, but from my understanding, your feed or your new or whatever pops. I don't know what the hell they call it on TikTok, but that's stuff that you actively see and search and stuff you like and spend watch time on. They put stuff there to keep you on the app. So the only way you could get stuff like that, like stick stuff like freaking cuties, is if you actively search for that stuff. And I don't know how you even find that because that stuff will get you banned. It should get you banned. They banned my fucking channel just because I posted some stuff with the Boondocks clip in it. I think I said like when Riley said hop off his dick or something like that, and they banned my channel. So the chance of you finding something on TikTok just randomly involving something like cuties is slim to zero. You have to search it out. And even searching it out and getting something like that is pretty slim to none, I think. I don't know. I don't freaking look at statistics or try to find data on this type of stuff.
Would go and search that out. This movie was advertised on Netflix.
No, that's not true. Every time I don't have TikTok on my phone, but once in a while before I was banned, I would go on there, and the first 3 videos would be the same thing that you see on Cuties. And that's why I uninstalled the app.
No. You need to be very careful with the stuff you about to say, because from my experience, other people around me who use TikTok, I have not once heard anything like Cuties being on their feed. Not once. Never. Ever.
That's why I refuse to have it on my phone, because it's directing you to those images.
Which is
you refuse to have it on your phone now because you're banned. You just said you had it before you were banned. So unless you use a different device like I did, I don't understand. But okay, whatever. It's a minute thing. Whatever.
The problem. I'm not disagreeing that's a problem, but that doesn't make this film.
We agree, but we just disagree that I think the movie was important to point out a flaw. Personally, I never empathized with girls being directed to that site before I saw that movie. That really made me understand what it's like to be a girl and grow up in that age.
I think we're getting. Yes, we agree that it is disgusting, but you are excusing it because you believe it highlights a very real issue, which it does, but it contributes to that issue by using children. They didn't have to use kids. You recognize that, right? They could have used...
They didn't have to use kids. But I also look at the director and I look at the moral of the movie, and I don't think that it was anything unsafe, and I don't think that the director had any bad intentions making it. So maybe...
You're giving content to pedophiles. How is that not immoral, and not unsafe?
It shouldn't have been as sexualized, but I defend the morality of the movie, and I also defend the effect that it had on me. When I watched that made me have a new perspective.
But do you see why that's kind of...
Why you need that movie?
Sorry, that was my cat. Do you see why that's kind of concerning to hear, though? Because in the time that I watched that film, there were unreal amounts of sexual scenes. In fact, the majority of the movie was them doing like the dance routines where they're smacking each other's ass, zoomed in on them shaking their ass in the camera. There's that scene where a security guard's like, "What are you girls doing here?" And they're like, "We're dancers." He's like, "Prove it." So they start twerking for him, and he's like, "Oh, great, get in here." Like that.
Oh, jeez. It's like so many things I've heard in my life. The deeper you get, it gets worse. What? The security guard said, like, prove that you're dancers, and they twerk for him, and like, oh yeah, you're dancers, all right, and they let him in. Once again, this wasn't necessary. Better movie, older actresses, better results, cleaner message.
Is a problem, no matter how you spin it. Again, the message is fine. There was never anything wrong with the message, and maybe the intention of the director was...
how would you tell the director to convey the message in a different way?
You would just not use children. You could deliver the same message and you don't use children. The problem is
I don't
that
think it would be effective. I don't think it would be as effective.
No.
It's
So
unfortunate that it's misinterpreted, but
Okay, oh my god. The scenario I painted out earlier. If you use 19 to 18-year-old women and have them be, 17 or whatever years old and have them be taught to the older men, if you see that as wrong and praying and being a predator as those guys, how could you not have that trickle down to 11 and 13-year-old? If it's sick to go after a 16 or 17-year-old when you're so older than her, how is it not sick to look at a 13 or 11-year-old girl? Come on.
you couldn't be able to have that effect and show how provocative and how dangerous it is without using kids. Of course, the shots probably did not need to be that bad, but when I watched that, I was absolutely disgusted. And like I said, it changed my perspective. And what I'm surprised about is that you are against wokeness, because everything that your content is about, it doesn't seem like you've ever directed any energy towards how dangerous wokeness can be, which is exactly what that movie's about. It's saying how important Islamic values are in the face of wokeness. It's about a Western African family, Islamic. They go to France, a completely woke country that's now being burned alive, and women are running around topless. Wokeness has consumed France.
What is he talking about?
It's pointing out.
Why is he talking? Okay, maybe I'm just saying this because of what I've heard recently, but why does he almost sound like Andrew Tate? Well, I don't understand the correlation, nor do I understand the legitimacy what he's saying.
A proper solution to this problem, which is embracing Islamic values.
Who was the director of the film? Do you know?
Her name is Maminu Dukure. Maminu Dukure, I think that's her name. She's a Western African woman, and she moved to France. So I imagine that she had a very similar experience, and she was trying to portray what it was like growing up.
So the message of the movie is about social media, and almost exclusively. She directed the film based on seeing some children in a neighborhood doing sexual dances and wondering, how did it get to that point? This isn't okay. So the movie was supposed to be about how does a child get to that point, and it's about how social media is poisoning them, and they're constantly comparing themselves. They're seeing these things, so they're putting on makeup and they're doing sexual shit, and they never really understand why or the consequences of it. It's not a critique on wokeness, though. Of course, anything in the art field you can derive your own meaning from. I recognize that almost everything you encounter in life you tie back to either cancellation or wokeness, but in this film in particular, this is a movie I really feel conflicts hard with your ideology. Under no circumstances should children be sexualized, is where I stand. Do you disagree?
For real.
There's a lot of things in movies, like I don't agree with incest in Star Wars, but Star Wars has incest scenes. I don't agree
But that's
with
not
incest, but it's portrayed.
It's not real incest, though. This is real children being sexualized. It's not fake. These are 11.
Agree. I agree. But
I know damn well he ain't talking about Luke and Leia having that kiss or whatever, and shit. Y'all finna take my Star Wars nerd card away, yo. If I'm remembering right, it was when in that scene where they're like in like the garbage vat, and like all like in the water and stuff. If I'm remembering right, is that Empire Strikes Back or is that New Hope? I think it's New Hope because that's when they rescue her. When they rescue Leia. Damn, I can't remember. Fuck it. Y'all finna take my shit away.
I'm defending the point of the movie.
You can defend the point of the movie but you can still condemn the movie itself. The point can stand on its own 2 feet, right? Like, there is a problem, which you recognize, with kids being sexualized, in specific on TikTok. That is a problem in and of itself. But you can still condemn this film for contributing to the thing it's supposed to speak out against, which is sexualizing children, which you have admitted it does. And it didn't need to, like you said. That is the problem.
Maybe they shouldn't have used child actors, but I agree with the point of the movie. But how do you think that the point could have been conveyed in a better way? You think they should they have used 18-year-olds to play 11-year-olds?
That's exactly what most movies have done for a long time. A quick example is The Last of Us using Bella Ramsey to portray a 14, 15-year-old. Like, you can do that, and that's a lot more acceptable because there is no longer a victim. Like you'd said,
Mm-hmm.
children can't consent. These kids could never fully consent to being sexualized in this film like this on the big screen.
I would argue that when they use 30-year-olds and 27-year-olds to play high schoolers, like in Euphoria and like in 13 Reasons Why, it actually sexualizes kids more because we start to mature high schoolers and we think of them in a different way. People in their 30s and their late 20s.
That's only if you just look, if you know the age and you just don't give a damn. Like, you can look at her and say, like, she looks older, but then you realize, oh, she's not. Then you run the fuck away or you move the hell away. Like, come on, man. And then oftentimes, sometimes you don't even have to, like, have a conversation. Even if she may look more, I don't know, like a woman, that doesn't mean she automatically just have the same structure, raw gait. You know, there's certain stuff you can just tell a woman from like a girl. It's just some innate stuff that you can just tell after talking to women and dealing with women over a extended period of time.
Get addicted to Euphoria and they have ideas and they start romanticizing teenagers in a different way because they don't use actors in that way and they make them look more mature.
That's a completely separate conversation you can make arguments for, but that doesn't work here because it sexualizes already real children, right? So I think you're getting hung up on like the what ifs and like whataboutisms on other sides, but the core doesn't change. So let me give you an example. It is realistic to use kids for the message, right? Because it's about kids. Well, what if the child was naked doing the vagina pic? If they showed the kid's vagina, is that now too far? It's still realistic.
That's too far. So there's two ways the movie could have been changed to be more effective and that people would understand the message. One, they could have used child actors and they should not have been sexualized in that way. Or two, they could have been 18 plus and it could have been sexualized, but then it wouldn't have been as effective. One of the two should have changed. I agree.
Okay. So then do you think there's like levels to sexualization of kids that is acceptable and then unacceptable?
No, this is never acceptable to sexualize children, but
I don't understand why you even want to play that game. Just like, oh, we're gonna just do this and not do that. Like, nah, eventually, I feel like just eventually you might try to do that. I'm not finna take that chance. Nah, just leave it alone.
Then we agree. So then can we then say, since this film sexualized children, I can't really champion the film. However, the message is okay. Like, I like the message.
I agree completely. But the reason I defend that movie is because I think everybody just saw those scenes and looked past the message and looked past the good moral that the director had when making it.
That could very well be the case for some people, right? 100%.
I would say most people. Most people who hate the movie haven't seen it. Most of the people accusing me of being a pedophile for defending the movie haven't seen it and have no idea what it's about. They've just seen those scenes.
But they're also still not wrong for being upset about those scenes. Like, can you recognize that?
I think they should be more upset at the problem. I think people should direct that anger instead of calling me a pedophile on the internet. They should look at the system that turns these girls into sexual objects at a young age and be more angry at that. That is the real issue. That is the bigger problem at large.
They do, though. It's not mutually exclusive, like where it's one or the other.
Do they? Do you?
Yes.
Do I what? Talk about the problem?
Do you direct that anger? I see you.
Now, from here, we started branching off into other conversational topics, but I do want to go ahead and give a little wrap-up here. After talking to him about it, it really feels like he sticks to his guns just out of pure stubbornness because he's defended it for so long. He's unwilling to forfeit on the point, even though he can clearly recognize that the sexualization of children is a bad thing. And since the movie sexualizes children, it is full stop a bad thing. He can't separate the message and applaud the message without applauding the whole film, which is a problem. He repeatedly calls it his favorite movie and how important it is, but he's only referring to the intentions with the message, and the message is...
Like, Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan. There's just so many movies that have beautiful messages, and you choose cuties to be your favorite, and your excuse is because of the message. I'm not calling him a label or anything. I'm just saying it's just weird. It just doesn't correlate to me.
Is fine, but the film itself is not fine. It wanted to speak out against social media, poisoning these children and having them do sexual things, and it's horrible. The film wanted to call that out and point a light at how horrible it is, but doing so, they used real 11 to 13-year-olds and actually sexualized them. Thus, It's a fucking horrible thing that they produced. And by my definition, and many people's definition, is child porn. That shouldn't be defended by any means. Now, I wish Sneako would be able to just separate the message from the film, because the message is fine. That is something that you can applaud, but not the film itself.
Follow the narrative that's popular on social media, but I don't see you ever directed at the problem. Do you agree that wokeness is one of the biggest problems that corrupts kids nowadays?
Define wokeness.
Wokeness is the liberal ideology, is feelings over facts. I identify this way because I feel like it is, there's no gender, nothing matters, I do as I want, everything that's promoted on social media.
Do you realize half of what you just described is how you've lived your life for the last year? Like feelings over facts, for example. You champion bullying. You think bullying needs to come back. I have never canceled you. Can you recognize that? I've actually always spoke out against deplatforming, if you've ever noticed. I spoke out against it.
No, but you were also disingenuous. When I called out the Soy Boy collage, you were like, these people just hurt my feelings. Most of those people actively advocated
for my
cancellation.
Nick is not green is the only person.
True. That's not true. Ethan Klein celebrated and clapped when I was banned and said, good, finally this misogynist is banned. What happens on the internet, I understand. It's good to have back and forth. Bullying is good because it makes you have to develop your character in a different way. That's not why I was upset. I was upset because a lot of these people were secretly happy or secretly hoping that I was going to get banned because they disagree with my ideology.
But then why am I on that list when I've only ever spoke out against deplatforming? That seems like I'm there because I hurt your feelings.
You didn't hurt my feelings. I thought it was funny because you do look like the rest of them.
I don't understand how, but we're not here to get
sense.
into the nitty-gritty, I guess. Now, after talking to Sneako, it became clear that he really lives his life fearful of wokeness. He is constantly haunted by the woke boogeyman, like he's trapped in Luigi's mansion, but every ghost is woke. It's one of those things where every topic we started talking about always tied back to either cancellation or wokeness, which I think is pretty sad to be in that state of, I guess, unease, where he's always feeling as though woke is breathing down his neck. It's haunting his dreams like Freddy Krueger. But I'm going to get into that just a little bit more in a second. I do want to mention that collage where he's claiming it's not people that hurt his feelings, it's people that like advocated for his cancellation and shit, which again, I never did. I have only ever made fun of him and insulted him. Or made fun of one of his friends that he felt the need to pick up the
It's just such a weak defense. Like, come on, man. Just because somebody disagreed with you doesn't mean they're a soy boy or they're woke or they're part of Matrix or any other excuse. Sometimes people just disagree to disagree. Or sometimes people disagree for a valid reason. And the best way to hash that out is conversation and debate, not through cancellation.
You know, the white knight's armor to defend the honor of. So I, under no circumstances, fit any of his definitions there, except for he thinks I look like the rest of the people there, which I have still not to this day seen a single living, breathing human being that has said there is similarity between anyone on that collage. Fucking 30 people on that collage, and there is no similarity amongst any of them. All types of different backgrounds, faces, hair, everything, beliefs. It's not even fucking close. I don't know what he's seeing there. Maybe he's like face blind, so he sees everyone as like a default RuneScape character on Tutorial Island. I don't know. But anyway, back to the woke topic. I wanted him to define woke, and he gave me his definition of woke.
I never played RuneScape. It's up like a couple times, but World of Warcraft, still is my shit. Even though I don't play it as much anymore, I still follow the lore because I love the lore.
To his credit, that was more than I would have expected, because last time I saw someone try to define woke, it was a fucking disaster. But he clearly does have at least some belief on what wokeness is and what it means to him. Now, he asked me if I think that's the biggest problem facing the youth today. And I didn't really get to get a clear answer in there because he kept switching kind of rapidly. My answer is no. But I do think the biggest problem that's plaguing the youth today is the fact that kids feel forced to choose sides so early in life, before their brain has even had a chance to develop. Now, whether you want to subscribe to one side of the political spectrum or the other, you are always being forced down one path in this level of tribalism where you always have to blindly support that side and hate everything and everyone on the other. I think that shit sucks fuck. I think that's a horrible way of living life, and it leads to a situation that we see a lot now where people aren't friends with someone that don't share every single thing in common. For example, I have friends that I disagree with on many things, but we're still friends at the end of the day because
Same.
we do have commonality in like personality and we have fun together. We
For
don't
real.
need to agree on everything, and I wouldn't want that. I don't like echo chambers. And
Thank you.
regardless of
Me
if
too.
you're on the woke side or the anti-woke side, you put yourself in an echo chamber no matter what. And both sides eat you alive if you so much as critique something about that side. It seems like it's constantly discouraged to think for yourself. You have to be fed your
Yes,
thoughts.
this is
Whether that's
absolutely
being
right.
fed the thoughts that Sneako hates or being fed the thoughts that Sneako champions. It's always being fed your own idea, their ideas, and then you try and adopt them as your own, and any kind of deviation from that is frowned upon in the communities. And in fact, if you decide you don't want to go down either of those paths and you try and like take information from both sides and form your own perspective, you get insulted for being a centrist. What is the meme? Enlightened centrist? There is no winning. The only winning move is not to play. That is what I feel the biggest problem is for the youth, is forcing them to make these decisions where they have to play for one team or the other for their whole fucking life, and then regardless of which side you choose to go to, you still get eaten alive by members of the same community if you're somewhat out of line or thinking
That
too
is
hard for
true.
yourself. That's
Jordan Peterson warned about that years and years ago. How eventually the woke or the left will eventually eat their own because at a certain point you have to find a new oppressor and you have to find a new victim. And sometimes I'll be amongst your own if they don't get in line. It just happens when you have that type of mindset or culture. And it's even crazy too that Harry talks about how young kids have to deal with this stuff, but even the older ones, 20 to like 30 or something, that get involved with this stuff and have to pick sides, their brains or their knowledge isn't fully developed. They're not wise as they will be. Oftentimes, older people who are not as, I don't know, gun ho or radical, they used to be radical in their youth, but they rise up as they got older and life and knowledge happen to them, and they're not the same. They don't see the world in black and white the same way young people do. And I'm worried about young people influencing the younger generations to the point where we can't even get wise because the whole country or the world may collapse because we can't even get wise or smart up to our mistakes and the previous mindsets or ideologies we agree with. Because no matter what we do, we have somebody younger or somebody different from us saying if you don't think this way, you're wrong. And that may include racist, sexist, homophobic, or whatever. And it's ridiculous. It's not conductive to a progressive, in term progressive, I mean like intellectually, scientifically, civilization wise, it's not progressive for that society. It's regressive. And I'm not supportive of that.
That's what I think the biggest problem is with growing up with social media and Twitter constantly plaguing people's minds, which in turn leads to everyone being miserable and mad at everything and everyone. And I also think it lends itself to making everyone more isolated and lonely, because then they lock themselves online, constantly fighting battles for their ideology on Twitter with fucking
Stupid.
random bot accounts and
Thank you.
actual
I was just about to pause and say, like, that's the thing too. You might not even be arguing or talking to a real person. It might just be a bot that is ran by like a government in like Russia, China, or any other place. Or it might be a person hired by the government to run that bot. Or it might be a person that just made up the bot and it runs itself. And you talking shit and getting upset with the bot. It's ridiculous. Don't waste your time going back and forth on social media. I don't do that shit anymore. I try to control it a lot more nowadays. I use a podcast and a YouTube channel to get this shit out. And at least in this case, I can have an honest Discord and get ideas out instead of trying to go back and forth with somebody and get my blood pressure up. It's just not worth it.
nonsense every hour of every day. So that would be my answer to what is actually plaguing the youth.
Similar. Overall, and you could see it with the Fresh and Fit video that you still haven't corrected, where you called Fresh a virgin. A lot of it, and you see people that hate me, they're like, oh, this alpha male, this alpha male, this alpha male Sneako. And I've never once called myself that. I don't think I'm an alpha male. I advocate towards things that are conservative. I advocate towards Islamic values. That doesn't mean that I think I am an alpha male.
I've never called you an alpha male. You're talking to someone.
You've called my friends that. You've called Fresh and Fit that, and you haven't.
They call them. You are really hung up on fighting for the honor of Fresh and Fit. What I did was exactly what you preach. I made fun of him. Calling him a virgin is a joke. Do I think he's actually a virgin? Probably not. And it's not even a good joke. Like, that's the laziest joke of all time, which is why it wasn't like the crux of it. I just made it as a throwaway statement in the middle of a rant about his ridiculous story. This is something that clearly weighs heavy on the mind of Sneako, where I insulted his friend, and my God, he has not let that go. This has become like his Vietnam, because it really seems to have taken a big toll on his psyche. He believes I owe a retraction and apology for making fun of him and calling out his story. And
then do that for every person.
I was wrong about all of it, even though, I'll play the clip in a moment, further into our conversation, he also admits he doesn't know if he actually fucked the 3 women that he claimed he did. Nobody knows. The story itself is outrageous. What they proved is he had DMs, like a conversation with the NBA player, but that doesn't corroborate the whole story.
I know you're about the Fresh and Fit thing. I kind of know about that because it happened years ago, so honestly, I forget most of it. So if you want me to react to that, I can do that in the future. But I kind of do know what he's talking about. Fresh and Fit. Not Fresh and Fit. Fresh. Say like he had a threesome with some woman through knowing that NBA player in Miami or something like that. And they only had like text evidence, but there's no really evidence that actually did it. He probably could be making it up. If you don't want me to react to that I'll be in Preach video I saw like, what, 2-3 years ago at this point, let me know in the comments below.
There is no apology or retraction necessary. It is still such a fucking crazy story he told that probably wouldn't even happen in the most obscure Brazzers porno ever.
Because you don't correct your mistakes. You were wrong about Fresh and Fit. You were wrong about Andrew Tate. And you were wrong about the movie Cuties.
Okay.
What?
Well, I'm glad you tied it back to Cuties, but before we get back to that, how am I feel like I'm one of the very few people on the internet who corrects himself. Whenever I make a mistake, I do go and make a clarification. For example, I got something wrong with a content creator holding a stand-up competition that was absolute dog shit, and then someone came there and made fun of him, and I didn't know the full context. Once I got the full context, I went back and made a follow-up video to explain it in more depth with more clarity. I always do that. With Fresh and Fit, you really hung up on this idea that he fucked 3 women that night after meeting an NBA player at a bar, and they exchanged Instagram information, and it turns out they were Eskimo bros with the same girl's pussy. Like, it's an outrageous story.
That's
now,
ridiculous.
whether or not it's true, you haven't proved it either. Were you there watching him fuck? Were you cheering him on?
He verified it. He showed the DMs with the basketball player. They did the whole podcast verifying
the DMs.
You didn't correct it.
Oh.
Did you? Okay, so you didn't correct that. They did verify the story. You didn't correct it.
Did they have the basketball player? Did they have the basketball player and the 3 girls he fucked come on and be like, oh my God, he absolutely plowed the shit out of me. It was the best sex of my life. Did he have...
That would never happen, but he did show the DMs with the basketball player verifying the story and that he did go to the party. Whether or not you want to believe he was with 3 women, I wasn't there either.
Hey, how many dudes went to that same party that Fresh went to? Just because they all went to that party doesn't mean they all had threesomes. So just because Fresh said that he went to this party doesn't mean he had threesome either. That's ridiculous. Just for you proving that you was there doesn't mean anything. I could say anybody at that party had a threesome, then it doesn't make sense. Just because Fresh said it doesn't mean I'm gonna believe it.
Either, I guess we're never gonna know. But he did get the DMs from the basketball player.
To add on to this, if there's even small elements of that story that are somewhat true, I guarantee the whole thing is still embellished because the story he told is a work of fucking Tumblr fan fiction. It is not exactly how it played out under no universe, especially not for him. He is an extremely sensitive guy. He would probably have started crying after the first round of sex instead of going right to the next girl. Like, it is just not something that happened, and even if there is some elements of truth to the story, the whole thing is probably still not 100% accurate, and even still, the whole core of the video is the same. I was making fun of the guy. that would still stay entirely intact. Now I'm getting carried away with Fresh and Fit here. The conversational topic here was about not correcting things that I've got wrong. And I've actually prided myself on being willing to accept when I'm wrong. I think that's one of the most important qualities a person can have in something that is very unfortunately absent from most people in the current day and age, where everyone has this complete reluctance and this like, ooh, yuckiness, I can't be wrong, I have to be perfect all the time attitude. I am more than willing to embrace and accept when I get things wrong, which is why I've made so many videos saying, I was wrong about this, got this wrong, this one was off, and adding more clarity to situations that I've covered when more information came out, or if something turned out to be fraudulent. I have done.
True, that's probably part of the success that he has. That he's so open and honest about his mistakes. He's human just like the rest of us. And it's important that we all accept that and not hate ourselves and put too much pressure on ourselves because we're human. We make mistakes. If we're honest with ourselves and each other, we can all improve and progress. And that's something that we should all want and strive for.
Done that for years, and I always have. In the case of Fresh and Fit, there is nothing to fucking correct. Now, I'm going a little out of order of our conversation because we kept bouncing back and forth between certain things, fucking pinballing around, but I'm trying to connect all the points together. So we're going to talk about the Andrew Tate thing in a moment. That's something we talked about for a little bit because Tate is very clearly someone that is a heavy influence in Sneako's life. But before then, I do want to focus on a couple other things we talked about, and that's him victimizing himself constantly. This is something I've called out, and I wanted to hear his perspective on it.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause it right there because it's already 30 minutes into this fucking hour and a quarter long video, and I know I already gotta be close to like 50 or something minutes for all the times I pause. So let me know if you enjoy it, like, comment, subscribe, and also let me know if you want part 2. That'll probably be coming out tomorrow in the next couple of days. So that's it. It's your boy Logos, and I'll talk to y'all next time.